You know that feeling when you first step off a plane, right? Like in a massive, completely unfamiliar city?
Oh, yeah. Just totally overwhelmed.
Exactly. You're surrounded by thousands of people. The street signs are literal gibberish to you. And for a split second, you just completely forget who you are.
It's terrifying, honestly.
Right. Or, well, think about relationships for a second. Have you ever struggled with that really jarring gap between the fairy tale ideal of a partnership and the incredibly messy day-to-day reality of actually sharing your life and your identity with someone else?
That sense of losing your bearings, whether it's geographically in a crowd or emotionally in a marriage, it's a profoundly disorienting experience.
Mhm.
And, I mean, we usually treat these as very modern neuroses, right?
We do. We think they're just side effects of modern living or like smartphones or whatever. But today, we're going on a deep dive into a stack of sources that prove those specific fears: the terror of losing your identity in a crowd, the quiet struggles of a flawed marriage are actually at least 400 years old.
Yeah, they really are.
We're looking at excerpts from the Royal Shakespeare Company's edition of William Shakespeare's The Comedy of Errors. We've got Jonathan Bates' introduction, some critical debates, the historical context, and the actual opening acts of the playtext on the table today.
And historically, I mean, this play has really been relegated to the bottom of the Shakespearean barrel.
Oh, completely overlooked.
Right. The romantic critics of the 19th century, people like William Hazlitt, they just viewed it as a trivial imitation of a Roman play. They assumed Shakespeare dashed it off without putting much, soul or effort into the work. They saw it as a purely mechanical slapstick farce.
But our mission today is to completely dismantle that idea. Because when you actually dig into this 400-year-old script and you bypass all that surface-level clowning, you find incredible psychological depth.
You really do.
We're going to see how this supposedly silly play about mistaken identities actually tackles profound grief, the extreme fragility of the human mind, and just the absolute panic of trying to connect with other people.
And to even begin to appreciate the genius of what Shakespeare is doing here, we actually have to travel back to the Christmas festivities of 1594 at Gray's Inn in London.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because understanding that specific Elizabethan audience totally changes how we view the entire play.
Right, so the audience there was comprised of young, highly educated lawyers. These were men completely steeped in classical literature who had spent their school days translating Latin texts.
So they definitely knew their stuff.
Exactly. And today, the creative currency we value most is absolute originality. If a creator tells a story that feels too similar to an existing property, society labels it derivative or just uninspired.
Right, we want brand new ideas.
But for an Elizabethan audience with a classical education, creativity meant something radically different.
And this is where we look at modern Hollywood reboots through a very similar lens, actually. When you buy a ticket for a new Batman movie, you aren't looking for a completely original superhero you've never heard of, right?
No, you want Batman.
Exactly. You want the deeply familiar framework of Gotham and Bruce Wayne. But you want a clever twist. You want the new director to prove their brilliance by taking that familiar structure and just elevating it in a way you didn't see coming.
And in the Renaissance, this concept was called the overgo. A brilliant work of art wasn't praised for being wholly unprecedented. It was praised for closely resembling an admired classical masterpiece and then systematically outdoing it.
Outdoing it. I love that. So when Shakespeare sat down to write The Comedy of Errors, what was his blueprint?
His foundational blueprint was a play by the ancient Roman playwright Plautus called Menechmi.
And the plot of Menechmi is basically the mother of all mistaken identity tropes, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You have this merchant from Syracuse who has identical twin sons. One gets stolen at age 7.
Tragic.
Very. The father is devastated, renames the remaining twin to honor the lost brother. Fast forward a couple of decades, and the surviving twin is traveling the Mediterranean searching for his lost brother.
And he happens to arrive in the exact seaport where the lost twin lives.
Predictably, yeah. And he is mistaken for his brother by everyone in town, the local authorities, his brother's mistress, his brother's wife. Plautus milks that single set of twins for every ounce of Roman comedy he can.
Right. It's just a cascading series of misunderstandings until they finally end up on stage together. And those educated lawyers at Gray's Inn would have known this Roman plot backward and forward.
Completely. They sat down expecting Shakespeare to simply execute a faithful rendition of a classic. But Shakespeare looks at this single set of twins and decides to exponentially multiply the chaos.
By adding a second set of identical twins.
Yes, he introduces the servant Dromios.
Which is just wild.
It is. The master twins each have a servant twin, and they were all separated in that exact same childhood disaster. So by injecting this second layer of identical faces, Shakespeare transforms a simple case of a stranger being mistaken for local into a mathematical explosion of farcical possibility.
Because now the servants are mistaken by their own masters, by the other's master, and by the townspeople.
Right, it just compounds the confusion perfectly.
And what really stands out in the RSC introduction is how tightly Shakespeare packs this madness. It is his shortest play, I think clocking in at only about 1,800 lines.
It is very fast-paced.
And it strictly adheres to the classical rules of drama known as the unities, right? Like the entire story takes place in one single location, the city of Ephesus, and unfolds over the course of one single day.
Yes, the unities of time and place. And the RSC editors point out that on the Elizabethan stage, Shakespeare likely used specific physical doors to represent different houses, like the Phoenix, the Porcupine, the Priory.
So you basically have a beautifully constructed machine where the wrong person is constantly walking out of the right door at the worst possible time.
Exactly. But this raises an important question. If Shakespeare has built this mathematically perfect, fast-paced machine designed solely for generating laughs, why does he deliberately stall the comedy by opening the play with a grieving man preparing to be executed?
Okay, I have to admit, this part of the text gave me total whiplash. You gear up for a hilarious, fast-paced twin comedy, and Act 1, Scene 1 opens with this merchant, Aegon, standing before Duke Silenus of Ephesus, literally being condemned to die.
It's quite a jarring shift.
Yeah. And he isn't just a random criminal, he's a victim of circumstance caught in a trade war between Syracuse and Ephesus.
Right. The law dictates that any merchant from Syracuse found in Ephesus faces automatic execution unless they can pay a ransom of 1,000 marks.
Which Aegon definitely doesn't have.
No, he doesn't. But before he faces his fate, the Duke allows him to explain why he risked his life to come to a hostile city. And Aegon delivers this agonizing 100-line tragic monologue about his past.
He describes a violent shipwreck years ago. He was on a ship with his wife, his infant twin sons, and the infant twin servants he had just purchased.
Just a total family unit.
And a massive storm hits. The ship is breaking apart, so they tie themselves to a spare mast to survive. Aegon has one son and one servant, and his wife has the others. Then the mast is driven into a rock and splits completely in half.
A literal division of the family.
Exactly. Aegon is rescued, but he's forced to watch his wife and the other two babies drift away into the ocean. He spent his entire life searching for them, and recently his remaining son left to go look for them too.
And Aegon followed, and that search led him to Ephesus and unfortunately to his death sentence. The Duke is moved by this devastating story, but he states that the law cannot be altered.
Right. He just grants Aegon a brief stay of execution.
Yes. Aegon has just one single day until the sun sets to wander the city and beg for the ransom money. If he fails, he dies.
But wait, doesn't wrapping a silly comedy in a deeply tragic execution plot just ruin the mood? Like, if I'm an audience member, having to listen to a man weep about his drowning babies feels like the ultimate buzzkill before a farce. How does a man waiting to die make people falling through doors funnier?
What's fascinating here is how the tragedy functions as a necessary structural frame for the comedy. Have you heard of the Canadian critic Northrop Frye?
I think so, yeah.
Well, he proposed a theory that comedy always contains a potential tragedy within itself. By starting with Aegon's impending execution, Shakespeare places a ticking clock of mortality over the entire play.
So we know that as the sun moves across the sky during all these hilarious misunderstandings, a grieving father is sitting in a holding cell.
Waiting for the executioner's block, exactly.
Wow, so the tragedy actually raises the stakes for everything that follows.
Precisely. The farce happening in the marketplace isn't just silly anymore. It becomes a vital psychological release from the dread of mortality.
Oh, I see.
We, as the audience, need the chaotic comedy of the middle acts to master our fear of death and loss that was established in the first act. The laughter is basically a coping mechanism for the profound tragedy of human existence that Aegon represents.
That makes so much sense, because the stakes are literally life and death. The confusion that unfolds in the streets of Ephesus stops being a simple mix-up. It becomes a psychological nightmare.
And Ephesus is the absolute ideal setting for a nightmare. In the Renaissance imagination, drawing on biblical history, Ephesus was heavily associated with sorcery, magic, and dark mysteries.
So it's not just a normal town.
Not at all. It functions as what literary critics call the green world, or the magical second world.
Oh, like the enchanted forests in Shakespeare's later plays.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
It's a transitional space where the normal rules of reality are entirely suspended.
And we see that suspension of reality. The second Antipholus of Syracuse, the wandering twin, arrives in town. He sends his servant, Dromio of Syracuse, off to the inn with their money. And mere minutes later, Dromio of Ephesus, the local servant twin, walks up to him.
The timing is just impeccable.
Antipholus asks if the money is safe, and the local Dromio, who obviously has no idea what money he's talking about, asks why Antipholus isn't home for dinner because his wife is furious.
And Antipholus thinks his servant is mocking him and immediately beats him.
Right. The physical comedy kicks off there, but Shakespeare gives Antipholus this solitary moment right before that encounter that reveals his internal state. It's the famous drop of water speech.
Yes, a very powerful moment.
He says, "I to the world am like a drop of water that in the ocean seeks another drop. Unseen, inquisitive, confounds himself, so I, to find a mother and a brother, in quest of them, unhappy, lose myself."
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It is. So what does this all mean? When I read that, I didn't see a clown setting up a joke. I saw someone experiencing a profound identity crisis.
Completely.
It sounds less like a 16th century farce and more like a modern person realizing how incredibly small and incomplete they are.
Well, if a psychologist were to analyze Antipholus today, they would likely diagnose him with a profound attachment wound.
Because of the shipwreck.
Exactly. He was literally ripped away from his mirror image, his twin brother, and his nurturing mother during that traumatic event. His entire journey across the Mediterranean is a subconscious attempt to heal that foundational trauma.
So he's desperately trying to reintegrate those lost parts of his family so he can finally feel like a whole person.
Yes, he's a desiring subject. He's torn between the human need to be part of something bigger and the absolute terror of disappearing completely.
Comparing himself to a single drop of water seeking another drop in a massive ocean. I mean, that perfectly captures the anxiety of moving to a new, sprawling city.
Oh, absolutely.
You desperately want to connect with the vast ocean of people to find your community, but you're terrified of evaporating. You fear losing your autonomy and your individual identity in the crowd.
And in Ephesus, that existential fear literally materializes. Strangers walk up to him, call him by his name, reference past conversations, and claim to be his close friends or even his wife.
It's pure gaslighting.
It really is. His internal sense of self is being aggressively and systematically overwritten by external forces he cannot control.
Having society dictate who you are against your own memories would literally drive a person insane.
And the RSC materials point out a crucial piece of biographical context that deepens this theme. During the period Shakespeare wrote this play, he was raising his own set of twins in Stratford-upon-Avon.
Hamnet and Judith, right.
Yes, and Hamnet was still alive at this time. So the phenomenon of twins, the reality of two separate bodies sharing a fractured identity, or one identity split across two lives, that wasn't merely a clever theatrical device for Shakespeare.
It was a lived daily reality within his own household.
Exactly. But this fear of losing your identity isn't just about wandering through a crowded magical city.
No, Shakespeare takes this exact same existential dread and forces it behind closed doors into the one place you're supposed to feel most secure.
A marriage.
Yeah. We transition from the chaos of the public marketplace to the suffocating tension of the private household. In Act 2, Scene 1, Shakespeare introduces the women of the play.
We meet Adriana, who is married to the local Antipholus of Ephesus, and her unmarried sister, Luciana.
And the editors note that Shakespeare uses their names and physical descriptions to position them as complete opposites. Adriana means of the earth. She's described as brunette, grounded in reality, and she is largely viewed by the other characters as shrewish, jealous, and difficult.
Right, whereas Luciana, on the other hand, her name means of the light. She's blonde, associated with the divine, and theoretically perfect in the eyes of society.
They represent two violently opposed philosophies regarding marriage and a woman's role.
They do. Luciana, speaking from a position of having never been married, preaches a doctrine of absolute wifely submission.
Just completely obedient.
Exactly. She instructs her sister that men are the masters of the world and that a wife must patiently and quietly obey her husband's will regardless of his behavior.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We have to look back at the setting. The play takes place in Ephesus. For a Renaissance Christian audience, Ephesus was famous for one major thing.
St. Paul's epistle to the Ephesians in the New Testament.
Yes. That specific book of the Bible contains the explicit command, "Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands." Shakespeare places a character preaching submission in the very city associated with that biblical mandate.
It is a deliberate collision of classical Roman source material and contemporary Christian theology. Shakespeare uses the domestic plot to actively test the reality of that biblical decree on stage.
And he tests it by making it look completely absurd in practice. Is he actively subverting the biblical text here? Because Luciana, the supposedly perfect submissive sister, sounds incredibly naive because she is speaking purely from theory.
She's just reciting the textbook rules of patriarchy.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Adriana, the supposedly shrewish wife, is the one actually living the painful, messy reality of a flawed marriage.
She knows her husband neglects her. She knows he prefers to spend his time and money out in the town, specifically in the company of a courtesan.
It's heartbreaking.
It is. Adriana is experiencing a profound dissolution of her own identity, parallel to what the wandering twin is feeling in the streets. In that historical era, a woman's societal identity was entirely defined by her conjugal role.
So if her husband abandons her, she legally and socially ceases to exist in a meaningful way.
Precisely. So when she eventually stumbles upon the wrong Antipholus, the wandering twin from Syracuse, and he vehemently denies knowing her, her reaction is visceral.
She begs him not to tear himself away. She argues that it would be as easy to drop a single drop of water into a breaking gulf and try to take it back out unmingled as it would be to take from me thyself and not me too.
She uses the exact same water drop metaphor.
Yes, she's telling this man, we are undividable, we are incorporate, you cannot break this marriage without breaking my actual physical self.
And the great tragicomedy is that she is pouring her soul out to a man who is literally a stranger.
It's just wild to watch.
It is a moment of acute domestic trauma, wrapped inside a farcical misunderstanding. This scene interrogates the traditional structure of comedy itself. In classical terms, comedies end in marriage, while tragedies end in death.
But Shakespeare acts as a supreme realist here.
He does. By the end of the play, the execution is averted, the parents are reunited, the twins discover each other, and Adriana's marriage is ostensibly patched up.
The operative word there being ostensibly, because the trauma Adriana expresses and the undeniable reality of her husband's infidelity, they don't just magically vanish because the twins finally stand next to each other.
No, they don't.
The happy ending feels like a provisional illusion. The messiness of their marriage will undoubtedly resume the following morning.
To truly understand how an actor brings these complex, messy emotions to life on a stage, our sources require us to look at the physical architecture of the text itself.
The physical text, right?
Yes, the play survives today only because Shakespeare's fellow actors compiled and published the 1623 First Folio after his death. The text is roughly 85% verse, but the RSC editors highlight something critical: the punctuation.
The editors point out that in Shakespeare's era, punctuation was not just a strict set of grammatical rules. It was highly rhetorical. It was designed for the human voice.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of Renaissance theater, the actors did not have modern psychological scripts filled with character motivations. They received a scroll with only their lines and their cues.
Just their own lines, that's intense.
Very. So the punctuation served as a physiological map for performance. Consider the colon. Today we use it mostly to introduce a list.
Right, like grocery items.
But the word colon originally referred to a specific unit of thought in an argument.
Wait, really? So a colon in a Shakespearean text isn't just a grammatical breath? It's literally a 400-year-old stage direction mapping out the actor's brain processing an idea in real time.
That is exactly what it is. When a 16th century actor is standing on stage and sees a colon in their text, they aren't just pausing for grammar. That mark is a physical mechanism.
Wow.
It is instructing their lungs to take a deliberate breath and instructing their brain to pivot their logic to a new clause.
That is incredible.
The RSC editors use the colon heavily in this edition to demonstrate how these speeches unfold clause by clause. It is a stage direction mapping out the character's thought process.
It gives the audience the illusion that the character is actively thinking, discovering their argument, and grappling with their reality in the very moment they are speaking the words aloud.
Yes, the text isn't just ink on a page. It acts as a physical bridge. It connects the playwright's intellect to the actor's breathing lungs directly into the ear of the audience.
It's a living blueprint for human thought.
It serves as a reminder that these plays were engineered to be embodied by working actors. They were meant to be spoken aloud by human beings wrestling with massive ideas of grief, fractured identity, and love in real time, right in front of a live, demanding audience.
As we wrap up this deep dive, it becomes incredibly clear that the Comedy of Errors is far, far more than a slapstick Roman reboot.
Absolutely.
Beneath the surface-level physical comedy and the perfectly timed slamming doors, Shakespeare has constructed a masterful, poignant exploration of the grief of a shattered family. He captures the utter terror of losing your own identity in a crowd, the stark, unromantic realities of a broken marriage, and the literal physical mechanics of how human beings process thought.
I would leave you with a final thought to mull over. Think back to Northrop Frye's concept of the magical second world of Ephesus. It is a chaotic place where identity is easily lost and forcibly remade, where appearances are entirely deceptive, and where strangers constantly claim to know you based on a superficial image.
Sounds familiar?
Today, we don't wander into enchanted forests or ancient cities of sorcery to experience that disorientation. We simply log on to the digital world. The internet is our modern Ephesus.
Oh, wow, that is a staggering comparison.
It is a chaotic realm of mistaken identities and carefully curated avatars. It is a place where we constantly seek out our missing twins, our digital tribes, our echo chambers, desperately trying to find connection and validation. But in doing so, in throwing our solitary drop of water into that massive, turbulent digital ocean, we risk the total evaporation of our true, complex selves. This raises an important question for all of us. When you log on today, are you Antipholus entering Ephesus?
That is a haunting thought to leave on, because
Yeah.
we really are all just stepping off that plane, walking into the chaos of the city, hoping we don't forget who we are in the process. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. Keep reading, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep questioning the world around you. We'll see you next time.